Hello, welcome back to Hunter Tuned. Today we're going to be dyno tuning and fixing up this Buick Regal. It was a Grand National at one point, and now we got a turbo 6-liter LS engine in this thing. It's got a turbo 400 transmission with a trans brake, and we did actually have this one in the shop right when I first got this new shop. This guy brought this thing in, didn't have the dyno at the time, and you know, we just kind of street tuned it for him, and he ran into some issues. The transmission had some failures, and he brought it back with a new transmission, and now we're going to dyno tune it. So when he dropped it off, the car was having some issues. One of these issues being under the hood, it was leaking some oil out of the dipstick. So this thing, it was spewing oil because the bracket on the dipstick tube actually broke, and there was open holes there, and when you would come into boost, it would spit some oil out of the dipstick tube there and get onto the exhaust and, you know, smoke a bunch, and kind of a fire hazard in my opinion. So I wanted to get that fixed for him. So I honestly just patched up the holes that were leaking, and I re-secured the dipstick back in there. Now it's not leaking any oil, and we seem to be good to go now. I also had to change the spark plugs on this thing, which was a task in itself, just because the way this downpipe is on this thing. The plugs are a little bit tricky to get to on this side. I actually had to put it on the hoist and get the number 8 spark plug out of it on the hoist from underneath. And we pulled out some plugs that were in this thing. It had some TR6 spark plugs. So these spark plugs are good. They work well for power under like 15 pounds of boost. This guy wants to make some good power with this setup, and we're going to try to lean on it a little bit if everything looks good. But just for good measure, I did throw a set of brand new BKR or BR7EF spark plugs in this thing. I gapped them down to 20 thousandths and threw them in. So with that being said, we got the new plugs in, we got the dipstick fixed, and now we're just plugged into his Mega Squirt. This car's running on a Mega Squirt Gold box, as you can see down there. And we are just tuning the fuel maps and stuff a little bit differently. It's kind of weird because his fuel consistency might have changed a little bit. That's one thing with E85. This car's running on E85, 2 fuel pumps in the tank, and a set of Bosch 210 injectors. And when he first brought it in, it was, you know, it left running pretty good on low boost. And then he went to go turn the boost up. He said it started breaking up. Something, you know, you get into it and it would break up. And that's part of the reason I did spark plugs on it. And yeah, even after I did all that stuff, I threw it on the dyno here, did just a couple throttle blips with it. And as soon as it would kind of come into boost, it was just rich, like really rich. And I don't know why the fueling changed, but sometimes that's just how it goes, and inconsistencies with E85 will do that sometimes. So I did fair warn him and just said, hey man, go to the same gas station every time as much as you can. And usually when you do change consistencies on ethanol, you can just change the fuel on the tune overall. You don't really have to retune the whole fuel map. So I'm just going to get the fuel map dialed, and then if it needs to get changed later, I can do it remotely, or he can do it just by changing the overall scaling of the fuel. So yeah, without further ado guys, I'm going to get in this thing and do some runs with it. We're going to work through the fuel map. Another thing I did do is I actually had to put a new O2 sensor for the wideband because the wideband was not working when it got brought either. So I put a new sensor in there, and now we're just going to get in this thing. It's all strapped down, everything's all tight. Oop, no it ain't. So now we got the fuel VE map pulled up here, and I'm kind of just scaling this. It was really aggressive before, so if he did turn the boost up like I figured he would, I made sure it was really rich up top, just because you never know, you know, if the fuel pumps are going to fail or whatever. I'd rather have the fuel in there. And this car does not have the air fuel safety set up, so I just wanted to make sure that the fuel map chucked a bunch in if the boost got raised. So I kind of slimmed out some of this fueling up here and just kind of smoothened this thing out and got the cruising all dialed in. And we also fixed the idle. So this thing just cranks right up now. One way that I do on some of these Mega Squirt cars is I take the idle. You go to start up and idle, and there's a idle advanced settings, and there's idle RPM timing correction. So the idle RPM timing correction, what that is going to do is if the idle dips below, you know, say 500 under the target, it's going to add a bunch of timing in to get the idle to come back to normal. And if the idle is too high, it's going to pull timing to get back to that target. And it is a good strategy I like to use just to get these things to idle good. Sometimes they're a little tricky with big raunchy cams and really big injectors. So yeah, but we're running pretty good. I'm gonna just run through this quick and just make sure if we have any safety stuff set up. Okay, we do have the safety on, which also could be another reason why it was breaking up, because the air fuel was running out of the target. So if anything from 0 to 14 pounds of boost, if it's like pretty much a half a point, 0.7 point away from the target, which we'll look at the target here 1 second. We'll check out the target. Yeah, so like 12.0, 11.8, if it's richer than that or leaner than that, it's going to actually pull, it's going to just pull power out of the car, spark-wise, I think, or fuel-wise. It's just going to kind of give you a cut as a safety, like, hey, this thing's running too rich or too lean, shut her down. So that's another reason why it could have been breaking up, but we're going to run through this thing, put some miles on it on the dyno here. It's got a really nice shifter in this thing. It's just a pull style. So third gear, second gear, first gear. We're going to be monitoring our temperatures as much as possible. We got good voltage. And the air fuel on the logger here is way richer than what the gauge is telling me. So that's another thing we got to look into. Okay, we're in high gear, 190-degree temperature. Everything looks okay. These wheels are kind of not balanced very right, so hopefully you can hear me. It's pretty loud. Good temperature. We're just going to kind of roll into this thing and see what it does, because I'm kind of, we don't really know what it's doing yet. Coming into it was good. Once it started running up and getting some RPM in it and some more boost, it started going a little richer. So I think I saw like a 1050 air fuel there. But we'll see what kind of power it laid down, and then maybe just trim some fuel out of it. And then go from there. Alright guys, so our first run, I'm doing this based off of vehicle speed and not RPM, because the vehicle speed is, when I do it by RPM, it says I only rev the car to 4,200 RPM here, and I was revving it higher than that, probably about 6,000 RPM. I can actually look on the log just to verify, but with converter cars, they soak up all that RPM. Like, you can't get a direct value into the dyno, but nonetheless, we can still tune this thing and get it running right. That pull on like no boost at all, 6 pounds, makes a 457 wheel, and it's rich. So it says 580 foot-pounds, which is also a good indicator that this thing's making some power. We're gonna slowly kind of creep up into this thing. I wanna just make sure that the fueling is all there and looking good. So I'm actually gonna just maybe do one more little rip and just trim some fuel out of it, and maybe we can clear 500 wheel on gate. So that's the goal. Just on wastegate pressure, we're going to maximize the potential, and then we're going to slowly just add boost into it, and make sure boost control and everything like that is working. So enjoy this rip. Alright guys, so that rip, it was a little bit leaner on the pull, but it also, the boost came up and then it kind of fell off, like the blow-off valve was leaking. That's what I'm thinking is happening, because this is just like a really cheap blow-off valve on this thing. We did pick up some power nonetheless, just taking some fuel out of this thing and cleaning it up a little bit. Picked up 10 horsepower, 20 foot-pounds of torque. And yeah, we didn't rev it as high because the boost, like I said, it kind of was coming up and then it fell right off. So I'm going to check out the blow-off valve situation quick and pick up with you guys in a second. Alright guys, so on further inspection here, we did find some issues and some boost leaks. So this intake air temperature sensor actually blew out of this coupler here on that run. So we definitely have to fix this. It has this little bracket to hold it into the coupler, but nonetheless, it's still going to be leaking some boost out of there for sure. So what we can do is we could probably JB weld the sensor into that coupler there and try to maybe alleviate that boost leak. I don't know what we're going to do yet. So like I said, they had this sensor kind of sitting in there, just into the coupler here, like that. But it definitely needs like some sealant or something on it so it doesn't leak. And then also I did find another, like, it looks like a hole in this intercooler pipe right here. I can't really, yeah, it's definitely a hole right here. So we're gonna have to figure something out with that as well. We might have JB Weld come to the rescue just to get this thing up and ripping and get it tuned up. So it is kind of slow coming into boost. I don't know if you guys can tell, but for me it seems like it's just a little lazy coming into it. So we're going to try to just address some of this stuff and get it all worked out. The blow-off valves seem to be okay. I think a lot of that boost leak was just that intake sensor there. So let's try to get that fixed quick. Alright guys, so I got this coupler off of there. This is the one that he had, and they drilled it and ran the intake sensor into the coupler, which didn't really work too well. This is also like one of them AutoZone couplers, which don't really work that well. I actually found a actual intercooler coupler, and I threw that on there and I clamped over that little hole that was there, so the coupler should be blocking that hole. And then the intake temp sensor, we're just going to leave it dangled just to do a rip and see if we can hold the boost now. Hopefully all the other stuff is good. No, it's not. So we also blew this coupler here. I was actually just looking around and I found that this one popped off as well. So we got to fix that too. Alright guys, so I got that other pipe off the turbo. That one blew off as well, so I fixed that. This is a plastic elbow, which I don't agree with. I might have a 3" 90 that we can just put onto here instead of this plastic one here, which honestly I should probably just do that instead of even risking it with this one. I think up on my loft I got a 3" 90 that we could put on there. That'll eliminate 2 clamps, and it'll just, I'll pick up when I put it on. I'll show you guys what I'm talking about. Yeah, here it is, laying up here in my mess. Alright guys, so I just got rid of this plastic 90. It looks like an actual intercooler pipe, but trust me, it's plastic. I feel like if I tighten these down too tight, it'll crack. So we got an actual silicone 90 on there now, and got everything tightened back down, and now I'm thinking we should be good to go. So let's just try to make some good power and hold the couplers in. held solid, good air fuel. Looking good, guys, looking good. And we also picked up 10 horsepower, literally doing no other change to the tune, just simply fixing that coupler situation going on in there. So looking good, guys, we're looking good. So this is currently our power. You can see that the torque, obviously once the boost levels, it's gonna start to kind of die, but we are making good power. 152 mile an hour on the dyno. This thing's got a pretty tall gear in it, but we're still gonna send it. So now, let's see if we can get this boost turned up a little bit. The air fuel and everything looked good. So now it's literally just a matter of getting this boost to make a little bit more. We're only making like 6 pounds, so let's see here. We can go to boost VVT and we can go to the boost control duty, and we can change this to say 20 or so, or 30. And then we just go on here, make sure our boost control is enabled. We do have 2 3-ports stacked on this thing. And we'll see what it does. If it increases the boost here at 30%, which it probably should, we'll just see what it does. Alright guys, so those last couple of runs that I did on the car, I was playing on the laptop just with frequencies and boost control duty and all that stuff to just see if this thing was going to increase the boost at all, and it is not increasing boost whatsoever. This car does have a CO2 setup on it with a tank here for Motion Raceworks. But I feel like this is kind of going to overcomplicate this setup for this guy. I feel like I want to just plumb it normally without CO2. I feel like we'll have good results either way, and it's just going to be easier to plumb it without the CO2 and having to worry about cracking the bottle open every time. And like I said, it's kind of just going to overcomplicate stuff. But it wasn't working for a couple reasons. So this setup is not plumbed properly. It has the one line going to the wastegate down there to the bottom, and this is technically supposed to be teed if it's running 3 ports. The bottom line going to the gate should be teed, and then one side will go to the bottom, one side will go into the 3-port, and then the other end here that was running into the car to the CO2 bottle was going into the other end. So I don't know. I mean, maybe this is plumbed right for a CO2 setup. I'm just not. I just don't think it's needed on this setup yet with this turbo. It's not a huge turbo where it's really going to need CO2. This is just like a 78 mil turbo, I believe. So then once I checked out the plumbing, I just wanted to verify and test the solenoid through the Megasquirt, and I went into the test outputs mode, and I just tested to see if I could feel the solenoid buzzing, and I could not feel it buzzing at all. So I then traced the wiring back into the car, and we have the one going into the boost pin of the Megasquirt, which is good. You need to run one end to the boost pin and one end to 12 volt power. So the other end of the wire here did not have 12 volt power. I just tapped it to see if it had 12 volt power, and it does not. So I'm going to feed 12 volt power into the other wire, and after we do that, we will proceed to plumb the setup without the CO2, just to kind of not overcomplicate this setup, and hopefully just get it tuned and get some more boost out of this thing. All right, guys, just wanted to give you some more updates on the Regal here and show you what we've all done. I've been working on this thing all day, and we got a lot of little wiring bugs fixed on this thing. There was some wiring behind the gauges and the radio that there was actually one of the bare wires that was touching a ground, and it was actually shorting out and causing the fan relay to kick on and turn the fan on prematurely, which was also interfering with my boost source because I tied it into the same circuit, and the boost control wasn't working even after I installed this new 4-port. So I got 4-port solenoid from huntertune.com on this thing now, and we got the lines plumbed how we need to. Turbo goes here, and then bottom of the gate on this side, top of the gate over here, and then vent right there. So we got this all wired in and working, and we got the boost to come up from about 7 pounds-ish to 12, and it kind of stopped making boost after that. I was putting more duty cycle in it, and even after all these changes, I can still only get 12 pounds or so out of this thing. I want this thing to be on like 18 pounds or 20 pounds even, to make a good number, but not too bad already. I might actually throw a cell phone clip in. I've been doing some dyno runs off camera just because I've been kind of busy, you know, tuning and stuff. But we're making 591 horsepower, guys. I don't know if the torque is accurate, but it says 727 foot-pounds, which is, I mean, it's kind of seems right. You can see the line up here is the torque, and then you know, the torque is kind of fading as the horsepower is leveling, and this thing's just, it's riding. It's riding good right now. We got the fuel dialed in. The timing is super soft. I think I'm running like 14 degrees of timing, which this thing would probably take another 4 or 5 degrees. But nonetheless, we are getting a lot of bugs worked out of this thing, and it is coming around. So it's cool. I might actually maybe just spring the wastegate up. I don't know if he's got just boost leaks going on with this thing, where it's just not gaining boost, or what the deal is, or if there's a restriction. I was also thinking that it could possibly have a restriction in the downpipe itself, because if the exhaust is choked up on the downpipe, it's not going to make boost how it should. So that's another thing too, is I could keep adding boost control to it and it's not going to increase. I feel like there's going to be a back pressure issue somewhere, whether it's in the downpipe or the hot side or whatever. But it's doing really good, guys. I'm stoked. Hopefully you guys learned something today and enjoyed a little bit something different than Hondas for once. I really like these old G bodies, and I really like turbo LS cars, and I love tuning them just as much as I love tuning Hondas. So, and these ones are a little bit more exhilarating when you're doing 150 mile an hour on the dyno making 600 wheel. It's a lot more fun and exciting. So that's what we're going to call it for today, guys. I'm going to come back out here tomorrow with a fresh mind. It's getting late, but I did get quite a bit done on this thing already. Plugs, wires, dipstick sealed up, the boost leaks, new boost control, and everything like that. Coronavirus, holy shit. Just kidding. Yeah, anyways, guys, have a great night and a better tomorrow. This thing came in making 450 with a bunch of issues, and then we fixed all this stuff and did these runs, and you can see now we are picking up power, making jam. See you later. Have a great night.